Goldie Hawn, Oscar winner, box office queen, Hollywood's eternal sunshine. But at 79, the world watched in shock as she froze on the Oscar stage, whispered, "I can't read it. I'm completely blind. How did the goddess of laughter end up here?" This is the heartbreaking truth behind Goldie Hawn's fall. Goldie Jean Hawn was born on the 21st of November, 1945, in Washington, D.C., a city filled with monuments to history but also with shadows of untold stories. Her roots carried both music and sorrow. Her father, Edward Rutledge Hawn, was a band musician and conductor of German-English descent, proudly tracing his lineage back to Edward Rutledge, the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence. Her mother, Laura Steinhoff, was the daughter of Hungarian Jewish immigrants who had escaped hardship to build a better life, and she poured her soul into running a small dance school. It was a household where discipline and creativity coexisted, where melodies from her father's orchestra drifted into the rooms while her mother's tapping shoes echoed on the wooden studio floor. But within that rhythm, there was also silence, one that would haunt Goldie quietly for years. She and her sister, Patty, grew up unaware that before them, there had been another child. An older brother, Edward Jr., had died before Patty was born. It was a wound her parents rarely spoke of, a grief wrapped in silence that lingered in the family air. And though little Goldie did not yet understand, that unspoken loss carved a delicate mark into her young soul. At just 3 years old, Goldie toddled into her mother's ballet and tap studio, her tiny feet stumbling across the floorboards as she imitated the older girls. By 10, she had already caught the eye of professionals, chosen to perform in the Nutcracker with the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. For the first time, the blinding lights of the stage washed over her, awakening a hunger she couldn't yet name. But while other children her age dreamed of toys or schoolyard games, Goldie's imagination already stretched far beyond. She didn't just want to follow the rhythm of the music, she wanted to bend it, to command it, to carve her own stage where every gaze turned toward her. And as she grew older, that yearning only sharpened. At 19, she did something daring. She walked away from her drama studies at American University and opened her very own ballet school. It was a bold declaration. She was not content to remain in someone else's frame, dancing to someone else's choreography. Even then, Goldie carried the instinct to rebel against boundaries, to make her own stage, even if it meant standing alone. This restless fire inside her would soon push her far beyond the dance studio and into a world much bigger and far more treacherous than she could have imagined. As Goldie grew, the stage became less of a dream and more of a destiny. At just 10 years old, when she was invited to perform in the Nutcracker with the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, she was no longer the little girl watching from the corner of her mother's studio. She was in the spotlight, swept into a world where every movement carried weight, where the applause of strangers thundered in her chest like a heartbeat. That performance was small in the eyes of the professional world, but for Goldie, it was the first intoxicating taste of what it meant to hold an audience captive. Through her teens, while friends spent weekends at parties or on school trips, Goldie was wrapped in leotards and rehearsals. Hours upon hours were spent chasing perfection, turns sharper, jumps higher, expression deeper. Yet behind that discipline lay a secret truth. She wasn't just following steps, she was quietly searching for something more, something larger than the four walls of any studio. By the time she turned 19, that hunger could no longer be contained. She dropped her drama studies at American University, a decision that shocked her family and friends, and opened her own ballet school. Most saw it as reckless, even foolish. Who was this young woman, barely an adult herself, to think she could teach and lead others? But Goldie's defiance wasn't arrogance, it was a declaration of independence. She didn't want to wait for permission to live her life. Surrounded by pirouettes, piano melodies, and the sound of tapping shoes, she found herself questioning whether ballet was enough. The applause was sweet, but it wasn't enough. The choreography was beautiful, but it wasn't hers. She didn't just want to move to the rhythm, she wanted to break it. to command attention not only through her dance but through her very presence. That restless energy made it clear Goldie Hawn was never meant to stay confined to one stage. She was meant for something larger, something unpredictable, something where every gaze in the room would lock onto her. And soon, she would find exactly that. In 1966, at just 21 years old, Goldie made the kind of leap that separates dreamers from doers. With only $250 to her name, most of it already spent on a tiny white poodle she couldn't bear to leave behind, she packed her bags, left the comfort of the East Coast, and boarded a plane bound for California. Her destination, the Melodyland Theater, just across from Disneyland. On that flight, she opened her diary and wrote words that revealed both her awe and her fear. If anyone doubts the existence of God, they only need to sit in this seat and look out this window. The sky is endless. The horizon stretches forever. And my future, though uncertain, lies somewhere ahead. It was the prayer of a young woman stepping into the unknown, her faith clinging to the clouds outside the window. But California didn't welcome her gently. Soon after, an offer came to perform in Las Vegas, and she set out across the desert in her newly bought 1959 Chevrolet convertible. The dream quickly turned into something like a scene from a film. Her car broke down in the middle of nowhere, leaving her stranded with her poodle, $50, and nothing but sand stretching endlessly in every direction. For most, it would have been the end of the journey. For Goldie, it became another chapter in her story. A passing hitchhiker, an American Green Beret just back from Vietnam, offered her a ride. By all logic, it was dangerous, but something about him made her feel safe. They drove for hours through the empty desert, sharing stories, laughter, and even a fleeting Sunday afternoon together before he dropped her off at the Desert Inn. It was brief, but unforgettable. A reminder that even in the middle of chaos, she could find connection, grace, and maybe even destiny. That was Goldie Hawn's gift. Where others saw mishaps, she found stories. Where others saw obstacles, she found opportunities. That broken-down Chevy in the desert wasn't a setback, it was a rehearsal for the life ahead, where unpredictability would become her closest companion. And as she set her feet down in California, with only courage, wit, and her poodle to keep her company, she was about to stumble into a career that would make her one of the most recognizable faces in the world. California was not just a new home, it was a proving ground. Goldie's first big opportunity came in the sitcom Good Morning World, 1967-1968. The role was small, but it gave her a taste of the spotlight, yet it also carried the first chains of typecasting, the dumb blonde. She was written as the cute but shallow caricature, the kind of girl who giggled instead of thinking, looked pretty instead of speaking up. For many actresses, that kind of label would have been a cage. But for Goldie, it was fuel. She took the stereotype and bent it to her will, infusing her characters with something unexpected timing, wit, and an undeniable sparkle. She wasn't just playing dumb. She was using the image to smuggle intelligence and subversive humor onto the screen. Her true breakthrough came in 1968, when she joined Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Overnight, she became a pop culture goddess of the 1962nd. Audiences tuned in every week, not only to hear the jokes, but to see Goldie herself giggling mid-line, dancing in bikinis, her body painted in wild psychedelic colors, her energy untamed and contagious. She was unpredictable, radiant, and utterly magnetic. But there was something deeper happening beneath the laughter. Goldie was mastering the art of contradiction. She could play the innocent girl one second, then deliver a sharp line with deadly timing the next. Her laughter didn't just entertain, it disarmed. She made America laugh, yes, but she also made them wonder, was there more to this blonde than met the eye? By the time she transitioned to film with the one and only, genuine, original family band, 1968, she was no longer just a dancer from Washington, D.C., or a television girl in body paint. She was a name, and Hollywood was starting to pay attention. What no one could have guessed, not even Goldie herself, was how quickly she would leap from quirky television sensation to Academy Award winner. While many actors spend years, sometimes decades, waiting for that one role to transform their careers, Goldie Hawn needed only one shot, and she seized it with fearless boldness. In 1969, after only a few years of quirky television appearances on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, she was cast in what seemed like a modest supporting role in the romantic comedy Cactus Flower. She played Toni Simmons, a young woman so innocent yet so reckless that she attempts suicide over love. On paper, it wasn't a role meant to define an era, but on screen, Goldie ignited an explosion. With her wide eyes and unfiltered vulnerability, she created a character that felt both fragile and alive, the kind of girl who could make you laugh and break your heart within the same scene. Cactus Flower, made for just $3 million, stunned the industry by grossing over $25 million in the US, landing among the year's top box office hits. Then came the moment that would change her life forever. At the 42nd Academy Awards, Goldie Hawn's name was announced as the winner of Best Supporting Actress for her very first major film role. But in true Goldie fashion, the story wasn't straightforward. She wasn't even at the ceremony. She was in London, busy filming There's a Girl in My Soup, and had forgotten the Oscars were being broadcast that night. At 4 a.m., a phone call jolted her awake with the impossible news. She had just won Hollywood's highest honor. Her parents heard before she did. On stage at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, Raquel Welch accepted the golden statue on Goldie's behalf from none other than Fred Astaire. For the audience, it was a dazzling and spontaneous moment. For Goldie, it was a surreal dream proof that her mix of innocence and wit could not only charm television audiences, but also conquer Hollywood's most prestigious stage. It was pure Goldie, unpolished, unprepared, but unforgettable. And in that single night, she went from a television curiosity to a cinematic force. But winning an Oscar so quickly was both a blessing and a curse. Hollywood was now watching her every move, waiting to see if she would stumble. The label of dumb blonde still clung to her, but Goldie was already plotting her next move, one that would prove she wasn't just lucky. She was here to stay. By the early 1972nd, Goldie Hawn was no longer just the surprise Oscar winner from Cactus Flower. She had become one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood. The little girl from Washington, D.C., who once twirled in her mother's dance studio, was now carrying entire films on her shoulders, and doing it with a charm no one could replicate. In 1970, she starred in There's a Girl in My Soup, a witty romantic comedy alongside Peter Sellers. The film gave her the chance to step away from the wide-eyed innocent and explore a sharper, more mischievous side. Critics were surprised. Goldie wasn't just a lucky newcomer, she had range. Then came Butterflies Are Free, 1972, a heartfelt drama where Goldie played Jill, the quirky neighbor of a blind man determined to live on his own. The role required both comic timing and emotional depth, and she delivered both effortlessly. One of the film's directors later admitted that half of Goldie's best lines weren't even in the script, she improvised them on the spot, making the crew laugh so hard they could barely hold the cameras steady. No one dared yell, "Cut," because her spontaneity was magic. By 1975, she was starring in Warren Beatty's Shampoo, a satirical look at love, politics, and desire in Beverly Hills. Once again, Goldie balanced humor with a touch of melancholy, standing out even among a powerhouse cast. Audiences adored her. She was no longer the supporting act, she was the reason people bought tickets. Through the decade, Goldie became a fixture on screen, unpredictable, radiant, and deeply human. She had a rare ability to make audiences laugh while slipping in flashes of vulnerability that made them fall in love with her all over again. And behind the camera, she was already thinking bigger. Unlike many actresses who relied solely on offers from studios, Goldie wanted to shape her own destiny. She began exploring the idea of producing her own films, a daring step for a woman in the 1972nd, when Hollywood was still dominated by men. By the end of the decade, one thing was certain: Goldie Hawn was not a passing trend. She was here to redefine what a leading woman could be, and the 1982nd would prove it beyond all doubt. The 1982nd opened with a bang for Goldie Hawn. She wasn't just a star anymore, she was about to become a force powerful enough to bend Hollywood to her will. That turning point came with a project that nearly everyone in the industry dismissed: Private Benjamin. When the script first circulated, executives laughed. No one will pay money to see a comedy about a spoiled woman in the U.S. Army, they scoffed. To them, it was ridiculous. Female soldiers weren't marketable, and audiences wouldn't line up for a woman-led comedy. But Goldie saw what others couldn't. She recognized the story not as a throwaway gag, but as a chance to challenge stereotypes, to show women stumbling, fighting, and eventually triumphing in a man's world. And she wasn't content to simply play the lead role. Goldie stepped into the producer's chair, a radical move for an actress in 1980. It was a risk that could have destroyed her career. When the film's original director stormed out, claiming the script carried offensive undertones, the project teetered on collapse. But Goldie didn't flinch. She made a swift decision, bringing in director Howard Zieff, and personally fought to keep the film alive. The gamble paid off spectacularly. Made for just $9.2 million, Private Benjamin went on to gross nearly $70 million, one of the biggest comedies of the year. Goldie's fearless Judy Benjamin, a pampered widow who stumbles into the army, struck a chord with audiences everywhere. They laughed at her missteps, but they also cheered for her grit. Women saw themselves in Judy's transformation. Men admired her refusal to quit. And Hollywood could no longer deny what was staring them in the face. Goldie Hawn was not just a bankable star, she was a visionary. The film earned her both Oscar and Golden Globe nominations for Best Actress, cementing her as one of the few women in the industry who could both star in and produce a box office sensation. But for Goldie, Private Benjamin was more than a hit. It was vindication. All those years of being underestimated, typecast, or dismissed as just a blonde, with one film, she turned it into power. She had proven, not just to the studios but to herself, that she could command both sides of the camera. From that moment on, Hollywood had to take her seriously. And in the years that followed, Goldie would ride that momentum into even bigger projects, securing her place not only as a leading actress but as a trailblazer for women in entertainment. After Private Benjamin shattered expectations, Goldie Hawn was no longer simply Hollywood's sweetheart. She had become one of its most reliable powerhouses. Throughout the 1982nd and 1992nd, she reigned as a box office queen, proving that audiences didn't just want her laughter. They wanted her presence, her spirit, her unique ability to light up the screen. In 1982, she starred in Best Friends, a witty and bittersweet exploration of love and marriage. With a budget hovering between $15 and $19 million, the film earned nearly $37 million at the box office. Director Norman Jewison didn't hesitate when offered the project. "If Goldie's in, I'll make the film." He called her performance the most mature of her career, a balance of playful humor and quiet wisdom that showed she was evolving far beyond the ingenue roles of her early years. Her run of hits seemed unstoppable. Swing Shift, 1984, gave her a chance to dive into wartime drama, while Overboard, 1987, paired her with Kurt Russell, blending romance and comedy into a film that would become a beloved classic. Behind the scenes, their late-night conversations on the beach turned into something deeper, cementing a partnership that would last a lifetime. By 1990, she was holding her own opposite Mel Gibson in Bird on a Wire, once again showing her ability to balance action with charm. But perhaps the crowning jewel of her commercial career came in 1996 with The First Wives Club. Initially, even Goldie, Diane Keaton, and Bette Midler hesitated to take on the script, fearing it leaned too heavily on anti-male satire. Yet Goldie pushed for revisions, insisting that the story balance humor with truth. Before filming began, the three women signed a rare pact. None of them would attempt to steal scenes from one another. Instead, They would share the screen equally, united in portraying resilience and reinvention. The result was magic. With a modest budget of $26 million, the film grossed $181 million worldwide, the highest-grossing success of Goldie's career. It wasn't just a box office hit, it was a cultural moment, a film that spoke directly to women who had been overlooked, underestimated, or cast aside. By then, films featuring Goldie Hawn had already amassed more than $2 billion at the domestic box office, adjusted for inflation. She wasn't just a passing craze, she was a durable star who had defied Hollywood's expectations, transforming roles that could have been forgettable into layered, magnetic performances. For more than 2 decades, she had carried the weight of an industry that rarely allowed women to stay at the top for long. Yet Goldie not only stayed, she thrived. She was a producer, a box office queen, and a living example that women in Hollywood could wield power, charm, and longevity all at once. But behind the dazzling fame and the glowing box office numbers, the pressures of her private life were mounting. And soon, Goldie would discover that the same determination that made her a star on screen was not always enough to save her heart off screen. For all the glamour she carried on screen, Goldie Hawn's private life was often a more complicated script. Her first marriage was proof of that, a whirlwind romance with dancer and actor Gus Triconis, a man whose life, like hers, was built on rhythm and movement. They first crossed paths in 1966, back when Goldie was still just an unknown dreamer, and Gus had already carved out a place in the entertainment world. He was a member of the Sharks gang in the legendary 1961 film West Side Story, a dancer beside Debbie Reynolds in The Unsinkable Molly Brown, and one of the lucky few who performed with Elvis Presley during his iconic 1968 comeback special. To Goldie, Gus represented both experience and excitement. To Gus, Goldie was a spark, a woman on the cusp of something extraordinary. Fate seemed to seal their bond in an unusual way. They shared the same birthday, the 21st of November. That small coincidence felt like destiny to 2 young artists chasing love and freedom in the bohemian world of music and dance. They married in Honolulu on May 16, 1969, just as Cactus Flower was premiering and propelling Goldie into stardom. The timing was ironic. As Goldie's star rose higher, Gus's career began to fade. What began as a marriage of shared passion slowly turned into a widening gap. Goldie's schedule grew relentless: sets, premieres, interviews, while Gus struggled to re-establish himself as a director. The imbalance weighed heavily. Goldie would later confess to People magazine in 1976 that she felt exhausted during those years, yearning to escape somewhere far away, perhaps to meditate in India, just to breathe again. By April 1973, the strain had become too much. They separated, though they did not rush into divorce. Neither seemed eager to remarry, and in some ways, both clung to the remnants of what once felt like fate. But the final break came in 1975, when Goldie met musician Bill Hudson on a flight, a meeting that would change everything. The legal end of her marriage to Gus was messy. When Goldie filed for divorce, Gus demanded $75,000 under California's community property laws. Goldie, deeply hurt, admitted, "He never supported me a single day in my life." The words revealed the bitterness beneath what once felt like destiny. By June 1976, their divorce was finalized, and Goldie moved forward, leaving behind not only a husband but also a chapter of her youth defined by exhaustion and unfulfilled dreams. For Gus, life continued in quieter ways. He directed low-budget action and exploitation films through the 1972nd and 1982nd, and later found steady work, directing episodes of Baywatch, Quantum Leap, and Beauty and the Beast. In 1978, he remarried costume designer Barbara Andrews, and together they had a son, Nicholas. They remained partners until her death in 2012, a steadiness that Goldie herself had not found in him. Her marriage to Gus was short-lived, but it revealed something crucial about Goldie Hawn. Even when bound by love, she could not shrink herself to fit someone else's shadow. And as painful as the split was, it set the stage for the next act in her personal life, a romance that would bring both joy and storms, strong enough to leave scars lasting decades. If Goldie's first marriage ended in exhaustion, her second began with sparks that seemed destined to burn bright. The fateful encounter happened in the summer of 1975, when she met musician Bill Hudson, handsome, charming, and a guitarist for the pop group the Hudson Brothers. At the time, Goldie was still legally married to Gus Triconis, but her heart had already begun to drift. Bill later recalled in his memoir that their very first date was almost absurd. Goldie actually invited Gus to join them. Unsurprisingly, the evening fizzled. Yet on their second outing, everything changed. At a Rolling Stones concert, a tray of white powder made its way through the crowd. According to Bill, Goldie didn't shy away. She joined in, laughed freely, and let herself be carried by the wild energy of the night. What followed was a 12-hour conversation in bed, where two artists laid bare their hopes and wounds, confessing love even though on paper Goldie still belonged to another man. Goldie has always denied Bill's claims of infidelity, dismissing them as the bitterness of an ex-husband. Still, what no one could deny was how quickly their relationship escalated. On New Year's Eve 1975, Goldie simultaneously filed for divorce from Gus and became engaged to Bill. By the 3rd of July, 1976, they were married in a small private ceremony in Tacoma Park, Maryland. That same year, their first child, Oliver, was born on the 7th of September. 3 years later, on the 19th of April, 1979, their daughter Kate arrived. On the surface, the family embodied a free-spirited bohemian dream, two artists raising their children in a house filled with music, laughter, and a sense of rebellion against traditional Hollywood domesticity. But beneath the glossy photographs, cracks began to show. Goldie's career was soaring higher than ever, while Bill's musical success started to falter. The imbalance that had doomed her marriage to Gus resurfaced. Goldie would later admit candidly, "Some men just can't handle it when their wives are more successful than they are." By 1980, the tension reached its breaking point. Bill filed for divorce, finalized in 1982. The split was bitter, filled with accusations. He alleged that Goldie wanted an open marriage and that she deliberately kept him away from their children after meeting Kurt Russell. In one of the ugliest claims, Bill said Goldie suggested it would look better for her public image if people believed he had abandoned his kids. The hostility didn't end with the divorce. Decades later, in 2015, their son Oliver posted an explosive message on Instagram. "Happy Abandonment Day on Father's Day, a pointed attack at Bill." The post went viral, reigniting old wounds. Bill lashed back in the Daily Mail, declaring that both Oliver and Kate were no longer my children, and demanding they drop the Hudson name altogether. What began as a love story filled with passion ended as a battlefield of accusations and estrangement. For Goldie, it was another painful reminder. The brighter her star shone, the darker the shadows in her private life became. And yet, as the storm with Bill Hudson raged, destiny was preparing to bring someone back into her life, someone who would change the trajectory of her love story forever. The collapse of Goldie Hawn's marriage to Bill Hudson was not just another Hollywood divorce. It was the start of a family rift so deep that its echoes still reverberate decades later. By 1980, the tension between them had become unbearable. Bill filed for divorce, accusing Goldie of wanting an open marriage, an allegation that cut directly against the image she tried to preserve as both mother and actress. Worse still, he claimed that once Kurt Russell entered her life, Goldie deliberately began to distance him from their children. According to Bill, she even suggested it would look better if the public believed he had abandoned the kids, rather than admit the truth of their fractured marriage. The bitterness only grew after the divorce was finalized in 1982. Bill painted himself as the victim of a woman whose career came first. While Goldie fought to keep her family life private, refusing to validate his accusations. The tabloids fed on every word, turning their split into a public spectacle. For Oliver and Kate, caught in the middle, the scars would linger. As children, they adored their father, but as the years passed, resentment grew. The final break came decades later. In 2015, when Oliver posted a stinging Father's Day message on Instagram, "Happy Abandonment Day," the world gasped. It wasn't just a son venting frustration, it was a public declaration that their father had failed them. Bill responded with fury. In a shocking interview with the Daily Mail, he declared, "They are no longer my children." He demanded Oliver and Kate drop the Hudson surname, effectively disowning them. The statement cut like a knife, not only freezing whatever fragile bond remained, but also leaving behind a legacy of bitterness that would shadow the family for years. Goldie, meanwhile, carried the weight of those choices. She had fought to protect her children from pain, but the war with Bill Hudson created wounds of its own. To this day, Oliver and Kate rarely speak of their father except with sadness or anger, while Bill continues to insist he was wronged. For Goldie, the chapter with Bill Hudson was more than just a failed marriage. It was a reminder that love in Hollywood often came at a devastating cost, leaving children to bear scars deeper than the parents ever intended. And yet, just as one love story collapsed in anger, another long dormant was waiting to be rekindled. A man she had met years earlier, almost forgotten, would return and rewrite the script of her personal life in ways no one could have predicted. If Goldie Hawn's relationship with Bill Hudson ended like a storm tearing a family apart, her connection with Kurt Russell began like destiny finally circling back. It was not love at first sight, but rather a story of timing fate waiting for the right moment. The first time they met was in 1968, on the set of The One and Only, Genuine Original Family Band. Goldie was 21, already a rising star. Kurt was just 16, a Disney kid actor with a boyish grin. She thought he was adorable, but far too young. Both were in relationships, and their meeting ended with polite professionalism. At the time, neither could have guessed that this teenage actor would one day become the love of her life. Years passed. Goldie climbed to the heights of Hollywood stardom, enduring failed marriages and raising 2 children. Kurt, meanwhile, transitioned from child actor to leading man, carving his own path with roles that proved he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the industry's finest. Life hardened them both, shaping them into people who knew the weight of love and loss. It wasn't until 1983, on the set of Swing Shift, that fate intervened. Both were single now. Goldie was an A-list star, mother to Oliver and Kate. Kurt had matured, his boyish charm replaced by steady confidence. What captured Goldie's heart wasn't a clever pickup line or Hollywood bravado. It was the way Kurt interacted with her children. On set, he played effortlessly with Oliver and Kate, making them laugh, treating them with tenderness and respect. In that simple act, Goldie saw something she hadn't found in her marriages, a man who embraced not only her, but also her family. Their first official date was anything but ordinary. After a few drinks, they impulsively decided to check out a house Goldie had been eyeing. Without a key, they fumbled their way inside only to be caught by police, who thought they were breaking in. What could have been a disaster became instead a story they would laugh about for decades. The perfect symbol of a relationship built on spontaneity, mischief, and trust. Unlike her past relationships, this one wasn't rushed into marriage. In fact, they made a mutual decision never to marry at all, not out of fear, but out of principle. "If you're independent, if you have enough money and love your freedom," Goldie explained years later, "not marrying gives you the feeling that you're together because you want to be, not because you're tied down." It was a love born not from contracts, but from choice. Every morning, as Goldie once put it, she chose Kurt, and he chose her. And that simple ritual became the foundation of a bond that would endure for more than 4 decades, something rare, almost unheard of, in Hollywood. As Goldie left the wreckage of her past behind, Kurt Russell didn't just enter her life, he transformed it. Together, they would build a blended family that stood as one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories. When Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell came together, they weren't just starting a romance, they were building something much harder: a blended family. Hollywood had seen countless celebrity pairings collapse under the weight of ego, jealousy, or publicity. But Goldie and Kurt quietly defied those odds, creating a home that became their greatest legacy. From the beginning, their household was a mosaic of children from different chapters of life. Goldie brought Oliver and Kate Hudson, still young but already marked by the turbulence of their parents' divorce. Kurt brought Boston Russell, his son from his marriage to actress Susan Hubley, a boy who carried both shyness and resilience. Then, in 1986, Goldie and Kurt welcomed their only child together, Wyatt Russell, completing the circle. Though not all connected by blood, they were bound by something far stronger: choice. Goldie and Kurt worked tirelessly to make sure no child ever felt like a half or a step. Dinner tables were filled with shared laughter. Holidays became sacred traditions. Arguments, like in any family, came and went, but the message was always clear. This was a unit, a tribe, a place where love was unconditional. Kate Hudson would later recall how watching Kurt interact with her and Oliver changed her life. She once said that Kurt wasn't just a father figure, he was her father, teaching her lessons of confidence, strength, and respect. Oliver, too, admitted that Kurt's humor and steady presence anchored the household, keeping everyone grounded no matter how chaotic Hollywood became. And then there was Wyatt, the living symbol of their bond. Growing up surrounded by siblings who had each carved their own identity, Wyatt inherited both his parents' spirit and their unshakable resilience. What made the Russell-Hawn household different was its simplicity. They weren't interested in Hollywood's image of the perfect family. They weren't bound by contracts, marriage licenses, or the glare of the spotlight. Instead, they built their life on everyday moments: Kurt cooking breakfast, Goldie laughing at inside jokes, the children teasing each other endlessly. In a city where fame often erodes the very concept of family, Goldie and Kurt quietly built a fortress of love. And as the years passed, that fortress only grew stronger, proving that their greatest production was not on screen, but within the walls of their home. The first to carry Goldie's legacy into the next generation was her son, Oliver Hudson, born the 7th of September, 1976. From the very beginning, Oliver stood out not because he sought the spotlight, but because he seemed born with a natural sense of humor that could brighten even the darkest rooms. On screen, he carved out his own lane in television. Audiences came to know his face through series like Rules of Engagement, Nashville, and later The Cleaning Lady. Though never chasing superstardom with the intensity of his mother or sister, Oliver built a reputation as a reliable, charismatic actor, someone viewers felt instantly comfortable inviting into their living rooms week after week. But it was off-screen where Oliver's true personality shone. Within the family, he became the unofficial comedian, always ready with a joke, a prank, or a mischievous smile that could diffuse tension in an instant. Kate once quipped with pride, "He's even funnier than I am," a confession that says everything about the role Oliver played at home. Together, Oliver and Kate co-created the podcast Sibling Revelry, where they peeled back the curtain on family life. Their episodes were raw, playful, and sometimes shockingly honest, so honest that listeners often blushed at the candid stories. Yet that openness reflected the very foundation Goldie had instilled in them: laughter, truth, and resilience, no matter how messy life became. In his personal life, Oliver married actress Erin Bartlett, and together they built a family of their own, raising 3 children: Wilder Brooks, Goldie Hawn, and little Rio Laura. Oliver delights in embarrassing them at every turn. On The Ellen Show, he once joked that his favorite pastime was tormenting his kids with dad humor, a role he embraced with the same enthusiasm he brought to acting. To Goldie, Oliver represents continuity, the reminder that even as careers rise and fall, the greatest joy comes from watching your children grow into loving parents themselves. She has often called Oliver the gift that keeps our household filled with laughter. Audren. And in a family where so many battles had been fought in the past, failed marriages, bitter feuds, public accusations, Oliver's humor became more than entertainment. It was medicine. It was proof that the wounds of the past could heal, that joy could take root again, and that a mother's love could ripple forward through her children in ways the world might never see. If Oliver inherited the family's wit, then Kate Hudson, born the 19th of April, 1979, carried her mother's star power. With her golden smile, her radiant presence, and her ability to mix charm with vulnerability, Kate seemed destined to follow in Goldie's footsteps from the very beginning. Her breakout came with Almost Famous, 2000, where she played Penny Lane, the magnetic, free-spirited muse of a rock band. The performance earned her a Golden Globe and an Academy Award nomination, instantly propelling her into Hollywood's elite. Critics compared her glow and spontaneity to a young Goldie Hawn, while audiences fell in love with her warmth and authenticity. From there, Kate built a career filled with box office hits: How to Lose a Guy, In 10 Days, 2003, Bride Wars, 2009, Something Borrowed, 2011, establishing herself as one of the queens of modern romantic comedy. But Kate never let her career overshadow her family roots. Behind the red carpets and magazine covers, she remained deeply loyal to the values Goldie instilled in her. One of the most profound lessons came in parenting. As a mother of 3 children, each with a different father, Kate follows her mother's rule religiously: never speak badly about your child's father. It is a simple principle, but one that fosters stability and love for children growing up in complex family dynamics. Her admiration for Kurt Russell is just as strong. On Kurt's 70th birthday, Kate publicly honored him, thanking him for the courage and confidence he had passed down to her. In her eyes, Kurt was not a stepfather, he was her true dad, the man who had shaped her sense of strength and loyalty. The tribute revealed the depth of the bond within the Russell Hawn family, proof that love doesn't require legal papers or shared bloodlines to be real. Kate also shares a unique bond with Oliver. Their joint podcast, Sibling Revelry, strips away the polished Hollywood image and shows the messy, funny, deeply human side of their family. Listeners hear stories of childhood pranks, parental lessons, and moments of vulnerability that reveal just how tightly knit the Hudson-Russell clan truly is. To the world, Kate Hudson is a movie star in her own right, but to Goldie, she is much more. The daughter who carries forward her resilience, the woman who embodies both the sparkle of Hollywood and the strength of a mother's heart. And in many ways, Kate's success is Goldie's ultimate vindication that even amid heartbreak and chaos, she raised a daughter strong enough to thrive, laugh, and love without apology. While Oliver and Kate often shine in the public eye, 2 other figures complete the Russell Hawn family portrait: Boston and Wyatt. Each carries a different role. Each embodies a different kind of strength. And together they prove that family is built as much on quiet loyalty as it is on fame. Boston Russell, born the 16th of February, 1980, is Kurt's son with actress Susan Hubley. Unlike his siblings, Boston chose a life away from the spotlight. Rarely photographed, almost never quoted in interviews, he has quietly resisted Hollywood's gravitational pull. Yet those who know him say his presence is steady, reliable, and grounding. Kate Hudson once recalled the first time she met Boston as a child, an instant recognition that he wasn't just Kurt's son, but her brother, someone who would be part of her life forever. Over the years, Boston has remained a silent thread weaving the family together, a reminder that not all legacies need cameras to be meaningful. Then there is Wyatt, the youngest, born the 10th of July, 1986, the only child Goldie and Kurt share biologically, and in many ways, the symbolic bridge between them. Wyatt seemed destined for performance, but not at first. Before Hollywood called, he pursued professional hockey, throwing himself into the sport with the same intensity his parents brought to acting. Injuries eventually ended that career, but from the ashes came a new path, one that returned him to his family's true calling. Wyatt's rise in Hollywood has been steady and deliberate. From a comedic turn in 22 Jump Street to darker, complex roles, he has built a reputation as an actor unafraid of risk. His breakout as John Walker in Marvel's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier proved he could carry a character that was both loved and hated, a feat that requires charisma, depth, and fearlessness. Soon, he would share the screen with his father, Kurt, in Apple TV's Monsterverse series, making the Russell Hahn legacy a multi-generational reality. Away from the spotlight, Wyatt's devotion lies in his own young family. With his wife, actress Meredith Hagner, he has 2 sons, Buddy, born in 2021, and Boone Joseph, born in 2024. Wyatt often speaks with reverence about Kurt's role as a grandfather, admitting, "He teaches the kids lessons I still need to learn myself." It is a powerful image, the once reckless young actor now humbled, watching his father guide the next generation with patience and wisdom. In this blended family, Oliver brings the humor, Kate radiates the warmth, Boston embodies quiet loyalty, and Wyatt carries the torch into the future. Each plays a part, each keeps the family whole, and at the center of it all stand Goldie and Kurt, proof that love, when chosen freely and nurtured daily, can ripple outward for generations. For decades, Goldie Hawn's public image was one of lightness, always smiling, always gracious, always radiating a kind of warmth that audiences adored. But behind that glow lay a harsher reality. Hollywood, as Goldie knew all too well, could be ruthless. Some colleagues became friends for life. Others became scars she carried in silence. By the time she reached her late 70s, Goldie finally spoke about 6 men she had clashed with, 6 names she admitted she could never forgive. She didn't reveal them to stir scandal or win sympathy, but simply to tell the truth about how cruel and condescending the industry could be, even to an Oscar-winning star. The first was Kirk Douglas, a titan of old Hollywood. To the world, he was a legend of masculinity and charm. To Goldie, he was arrogance wrapped in polish. Even after her Oscar win, he treated her as decoration rather than an equal, cutting her off in meetings, dismissing her ideas with condescending jokes. The final straw came when he interrupted her mid-presentation with a remark that left the entire room uneasy. Goldie quietly closed her notebook, stood up, and walked away, choosing dignity over confrontation. Then came Warren Beatty, the handsome star with a reputation for charm and affairs. At first, he showered Goldie with compliments and carefully staged invitations. But when she declined his advances, his warmth turned cold. Whispers began spreading in Hollywood, rumors that she was difficult, that she didn't fit certain roles. It was a subtle but effective sabotage. Goldie never fought back publicly. Instead, she offered only a cold smile when they crossed paths again, her silence sharper than any words. Chevy Chase was another disappointment. On screen, the two had created a beloved duo in Foul Play, 1978. But behind the camera, he constantly undermined her. He cut into her lines, pushed for script changes that favored his character, and treated the crew with disdain. Goldie remained professional, finishing the project. But when the film's success led to calls for a sequel, she flatly refused. To her, no paycheck was worth reliving that toxicity. Her clash with Bill Murray was even more jarring. At a first table read for a potential comedy, Murray arrived late and mocking. When Goldie poured her heart into an emotional scene, he sneered, "Why don't you try acting like you've ever done drama before?" Humiliated but unbroken, Goldie simply closed her script, stood, and walked away, never to return. She later set a new personal rule. No project was worth sacrificing her peace or her dignity. Even Sean Penn, at a charity gala for mental health, a cause Goldie deeply championed, showed her open disrespect. As she spoke passionately from the stage, Penn rolled his eyes, sighed loudly, and muttered, "She should just stick to giggling." Goldie didn't fire back. She simply raised her glass, smiled, and walked off the stage. From that moment forward, she drew an unbreakable line. Never again would she share space with him. And then there was Dustin Hoffman, At an audition where Goldie hoped to prove she could handle drama, Hoffman interrupted her in front of the entire room. "You're still acting like a sitcom." Laughter rippled uncomfortably through the crowd. Goldie finished her scene, thanked them, and withdrew from the project. Her message was clear. She would not beg for respect from anyone who had already decided she wasn't worthy of it. 6 names, 6 wounds, 6 reminders that in Hollywood, even at the height of her fame, she was often treated as less than what she truly was. Yet in every case, Goldie's response was the same. She chose silence, dignity, and distance. She refused to be dragged into the mud, because in the end, her legacy would not be defined by the men who tried to diminish her, but by the millions of people who never stopped loving her. Looking back, the 6 clashes that scarred Goldie Hawn's career were more than bitter anecdotes. They were lessons painful, necessary reminders of what it truly takes to survive in Hollywood without losing yourself. Each man she walked away from had power. Kirk Douglas with his old-school dominance, Warren Beatty with his charm and influence, Chevy Chase and Bill Murray with their comedic star power, Sean Penn with his raw edge, Dustin Hoffman with his prestige. Any one of them could have made her career more difficult or destroyed opportunities entirely. And in some ways, they did. Rumors spread, projects slipped away, doors quietly closed. But Goldie's response was never rage or revenge. Instead, she chose silence and self-preservation. She didn't argue in the press. She didn't drag their names through the mud. She simply stepped back, preserved her peace, and focused on the work that mattered to her. For every project she lost, another one came often better, often more aligned with her values. Her philosophy was simple yet radical in an industry addicted to noise. Dignity lasts longer than scandal. When others sought to box her into stereotypes or strip her of respect, she refused to play their game. Instead of lowering herself to fight for scraps of approval, she built her own table, producing her own films, shaping her own roles, and proving success could be achieved without bowing to those who dismissed her. This quiet defiance became her greatest weapon. By stepping away from toxic dynamics, she left her critics with nothing to feed on. They couldn't taint her spirit, and they couldn't stop audiences from loving her. The public didn't remember the slights, or the rumors. They remembered her smile, her comedic brilliance, her warmth on screen. And perhaps that was Goldie's greatest victory. Hollywood tried to belittle her, but she refused to let bitterness define her. She turned wounds into wisdom, insults into boundaries, and disrespect into fuel. In doing so, she not only protected her own career, but also sent a message to younger actresses watching from the sidelines. You do not need to sacrifice your dignity to survive in this business. Sometimes the strongest choice is not confrontation, but quiet resilience. Her life proved that the true measure of power in Hollywood is not the roles you take, but the ones you walk away from. After more than half a century in the spotlight, Goldie Hawn's legacy is carved not just into Hollywood history, but into the hearts of audiences across generations. Her career wasn't simply about making people laugh, it was about showing that laughter and depth could exist in the same breath, that comedy could carry weight, and that women in Hollywood could be both funny and formidable. From her Oscar-winning role in Cactus Flower to box office juggernauts like Private Benjamin, Overboard, and The First Wives Club, Goldie consistently proved that she was far more than the ditzy blonde stereotype Hollywood initially tried to trap her in. She reinvented those roles, layering them with vulnerability, wit, and unexpected resilience. In doing so, she didn't just entertain, she changed perceptions of what a female lead could be. But her influence stretched far beyond the screen. Goldie was one of the few actresses of her generation to step boldly into producing, refusing to let studios control her destiny. At a time when women were rarely trusted with creative authority, she demanded a seat at the table and showed that female-led projects could not only succeed but dominate. Private Benjamin was proof of that, and its success rippled through the industry, paving the way for more women to take charge of their stories. Her choices in her personal life were equally groundbreaking. Goldie and Kurt's decision never to marry, even after decades together, defied convention in a town obsessed with public image. Their enduring partnership became a testament to freedom, showing that love can last without legal contracts, that commitment, chosen daily, is stronger than any paper. And then there was the family she nurtured, raising Oliver and Kate, embracing Boston, and guiding Wyatt. Goldie proved that legacy isn't just about box office numbers or awards. It's about passing down values, laughter, resilience, and the courage to live authentically. Her children's careers, their loyalty, and their admiration for her are themselves part of her lasting mark. Today, younger generations of actresses look back on Goldie as more than a star. They see a trailblazer who endured condescension, ridicule, and systemic sexism, and yet refused to let it define her. She remained radiant, humorous, and fiercely herself. Her legacy is not just the films she made, but the barriers she broke. Goldie Hawn will always be remembered as a woman who danced through prejudice, laughed through pain, and turned Hollywood's limitations into her own stage of triumph. As the 2002 arrived, Hollywood seemed to move faster than ever, new stars rising, new franchises dominating screens. For Goldie Hawn, who had already given more than 3 decades of her life to the industry, the pace no longer held the same allure. After the releases of Town & Country, 2001, and The Banger Sisters, 2002, she did something few at her level dared to do. She stepped away. It wasn't a retirement announced with fanfare or press conferences. It was simply a quiet choice. Goldie, who had spent her entire adult life in front of cameras, decided she no longer needed to be everywhere. She wanted to live beyond the scripts, to focus on her family, her relationship with Kurt, and the quieter joys of life away from Hollywood's unforgiving gaze. For 15 years, her absence from film left a noticeable gap. Fans wondered if they would ever see her on screen again. But in 2017, she surprised them all with Snatched, a mother-daughter comedy alongside Amy Schumer. Though the film itself received mixed reviews, audiences were thrilled simply to see Goldie back. Her comedic timing as sharp as ever, her screen presence still luminous. It was as though time had barely touched her instincts as a performer. Around the same period, she also stepped into a role that seemed almost poetic, Mrs. Claus, alongside Kurt Russell's Santa in The Christmas Chronicles, 2018-2020. The casting felt more like destiny than design, the golden couple of Hollywood transforming into the most beloved holiday pair. Children who had never seen Private Benjamin or Overboard now knew Goldie as the warm, twinkling Mrs. Claus, spreading laughter and kindness in a whole new generation's memories. She also lent her voice to projects like Phineas and Ferb and the documentary SPF 18, proving that even in smaller roles, she could leave an impression. Yet her public appearances remained rare. The last time she co-hosted an award show was the 2018 SAG Awards with her daughter Kate Hudson, a moment that reminded audiences of her unshakable charisma. For Goldie, these years were not about chasing relevance, but about choosing presence, appearing only when the role felt right, when the project carried joy, or when family made it irresistible. She had nothing left to prove to Hollywood. Her very absence was a statement that a woman could walk away at her peak, return on her own terms, and still hold the world's attention. And in 2025, when she walked the stage at the Academy Awards, it became clear that even after decades in and out of the spotlight, Goldie Hawn could still capture the world with a single moment. By 2025, Goldie Hawn had become more myth than regular presence in Hollywood. For over 2 decades, her appearances on the big stage had been rare, fleeting moments that left fans yearning for more. So when she stepped onto the red carpet of the 97th Academy Awards, hand in hand with Kurt Russell, the world paused. The golden couple of Hollywood, still glowing after 40 years together, had returned to the very stage where Goldie's career first exploded back in 1970. She was radiant, dressed in shimmering gold that echoed her name, her smile as familiar as an old song. The cameras loved her, the crowd cheered, and for a moment it felt like time had turned back. But what came next reminded everyone that time no matter how bright the star, never truly stops. Alongside Andrew Garfield, Goldie took the stage to present the awards for Best Animated Short and Best Animated Feature. At first, everything felt lighthearted. Garfield shared a touching story about how one of Goldie's films had once brought joy to his late mother, and the audience melted at his sincerity. Goldie, with her signature wit, responded with a muddled, playful remark about being lucky to make movies. The crowd chuckled, charmed as always, but her words weren't entirely clear. Then came the moment that stunned millions. As she prepared to read from the teleprompter, Goldie gently took Garfield's hand and, with a nervous laugh, said, "Sweetheart, could you read that? I can't read it. I'm completely blind." Cataracts. The confession, delivered so candidly, rippled through the theater. Some laughed in sympathy, others gasped in shock. For a brief second, the Dolby Theater held its breath. Was she joking? Was she serious? No one could tell. Yet without missing a beat, Goldie opened the envelope herself and, with perfect accuracy, announced the winner, Flo. The audience erupted in applause, not just for the film, but for her resilience, her ability to turn vulnerability into charm even in such an exposed moment. Backstage, whispers spread quickly. Some reporters from the Associated Press noted that in rehearsal, she had been perfectly fine, only stumbling once in a way that made everyone laugh. Others suggested the blinding stage lights or booming sound of the ceremony might have disoriented her after years away from the spotlight. But online, reactions were more divided. Social media lit up instantly. Some argued it was nothing more than a temporary vision issue. Others worried it was evidence of something far more serious, a decline in her health. Perhaps memory slipping, perhaps age finally catching up with her. A few voices, harsher, speculated about medication or alcohol. Yet beneath the chatter, one truth emerged. The moment was deeply human. Goldie Hawn, the eternal goddess of laughter, had revealed fragility, and in doing so, she reminded millions that even icons are mortal. The morning after the Oscars, headlines across the world carried Goldie Hawn's name. But unlike the glowing reviews of her performances decades earlier, the stories now carried a mixture of admiration, concern, and sorrow. One candid remark, "I can't read it. I'm completely blind. Cataracts," was enough to ignite a storm of speculation about the health of one of Hollywood's most beloved icons. On social media, the reactions poured in. Some fans shared their heartbreak, writing, "It's sad to see Goldie like this. Age eventually reaches us all." Others defended her, insisting that cataracts were treatable and that her humor in the moment showed she was still sharp, still herself. Memes circulated. But unlike the cruel jabs that often follow celebrity missteps, many posts carried tenderness. People didn't want to laugh at Goldie, they wanted to protect her. Entertainment outlets dissected every detail. Reporters backstage at the Dolby Theater revealed that during rehearsals, Goldie had been fine, even making the room laugh when she stumbled slightly over a line. Andrew Garfield, who stood beside her on stage, later told friends that she had been warm, witty, and perfectly lucid just moments before. Could it have been the blinding stage lights? The echoing sound system? Or was it something deeper, something more permanent? Doctors chimed in on talk shows, explaining that cataracts can cause blurred or cloudy vision, especially under strong lights, and that surgery often restores sight. Yet whispers persisted. Some questioned whether her slurred, muddled remark about being lucky to make movies hinted at fading memory, perhaps even the beginnings of cognitive decline. A few cruel voices online speculated about alcohol, though those closest to her quickly dismissed such rumors. What cut through the noise, however, was the vulnerability of the moment. Goldie Hawn, who had built a career on sparkling confidence, who once could captivate millions with a single wink, had stood in front of the entire world and admitted weakness. And rather than diminishing her, it made her more human, more real. The incident reminded fans that their idols were not untouchable, not frozen in time like the characters on screen. They age, they falter, They stumble under the same weight of mortality as everyone else. And in Goldie's case, that humanity only deepened the love her fans felt for her. Still, beneath the admiration lay an uneasy truth. For the first time, the world had to confront the possibility that Goldie Hawn, the eternal goddess of laughter and light, was now entering the most fragile chapter of her life. For much of her life, Goldie Hawn seemed untouchable. With her dazzling smile, quick wit, and radiant presence, she gave the impression of eternal youth, someone who could dance, laugh, and charm her way past time itself. But the Oscars incident stripped away that illusion, confronting both her and her fans with the truth. Even legends are fragile. At 79, Goldie no longer moves with the same lightness that once defined her. Her voice carries the softness of age. Her memory sometimes slips, her eyes clouded by cataracts that steal clarity from the world she once dazzled. Yet somehow, these signs of mortality do not erase her magic. Instead, they deepen it. There is a certain grace in watching a star age openly, refusing to hide behind surgery, denial, or silence. Goldie has never been afraid of vulnerability. Throughout her career, she made audiences laugh by embracing clumsiness, by playing characters who stumbled and fell only to rise again stronger. Now, in her later years, that same resilience shines through her fragility. The trembling hands, the uncertain glance at a teleprompter, these are not defeats. They are proof that she is still showing up, still choosing to face the spotlight even when it reveals her scars. For her fans, this honesty is a gift. It allows them to see the woman behind the icon, not just the beauty, not just the comedy, but the human being who has endured broken marriages, professional sabotage, and now the relentless march of time. In that honesty lies connection. People look at Goldie and see themselves, their mothers, their grandmothers, their own fears of aging and being forgotten. Perhaps that is why her presence still holds power. Goldie Hawn is no longer simply a symbol of Hollywood glamour. She has become a mirror of life's inevitability, a reminder that fragility is not weakness, but part of what makes us real. And in showing her own, she has made her audience feel less alone in theirs. Her smile may be softer now, her steps slower, but her spirit remains unbroken. And that spirit, the ability to laugh, to love, to keep moving even as time chips away, may be her greatest performance of all. From the moment little Goldie Jean Hawn first stepped into her mother's dance studio, to the night she confessed her vulnerability on the Oscar stage, her life has been a story written in both light and shadow. She was the girl who laughed so brightly she could fill a room, the woman who defied Hollywood by producing her own films, and the mother who built a blended family filled with love that defied every convention. Her journey was never only glory. It was broken marriages that ended in bitterness, professional clashes that revealed the cruelty of an unforgiving industry, and now, in her later years, the frailty of health and memory. Yet through it all, Goldie transformed pain into art, prejudice into fuel, and fragility into a bridge that made her more relatable than ever. Time may have dimmed her eyesight, slowed her step, and softened her voice, but it has not erased her, because Goldie's legacy was never just about the movies she made. It lives in the laughter that still echoes whenever someone watches Overboard. It lingers in the inspiration felt by actresses who saw her break barriers with Private Benjamin. It shines in the strength her children and grandchildren carry forward, a living testament to resilience and love. And perhaps that is the truest measure of a legend, not the awards on a shelf or the box office numbers, but the way she becomes a part of people's lives, the way she makes a stranger feel seen, the way she brings joy in dark times, the way her smile can still light up a room even when her body betrays her. At 79, Goldie Hawn reminds us that even the brightest stars cannot escape time. But maybe that is what makes them shine all the more fiercely, that they burn against the darkness, however briefly, and leave us with memories that never fade. So now, it is your turn. If there is a film, a line, or simply a smile from Goldie Hawn that has stayed with you, share it in the comments. Let her know, and let the world know, that her story isn't just Hollywood history, it's personal history, woven into the fabric of your life. Because in the end, legends don't live forever because of the roles they played. They live forever because of the moments they gave us: the laughter, the tears, the comfort, the hope. And Goldie Hawn has given us all of that, and so much more. If you wish to keep journeying with us through the untold stories behind Hollywood's bright lights, don't forget to hit subscribe. Together, we'll continue to uncover the truths, the tragedies, and the triumphs of the stars who once seemed untouchable, just like Goldie.